Okay, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we'll have some other folks streaming in, but we want to be sensitive to you guys' time and also get into the presentation. My name is Brian Van Hook, and I'm the Regional Director of the Florida Small Business Development Center at FIU. We are very proud to partner with First American Bank and also SFMA on this particular training, and this has been part of a number of initiatives that we've done in partnership with them. So I'll let my partners talk in a minute, but I did want to just say, thank you for coming. We're going to have some polls that are going to come up. Please take a minute to fill out the polls. Also, please don't be shy. Shelly is a very seasoned presenter and consultant, so you want to stump her with questions. You want to have some really tough questions for Shelly. Don't make me come back at the end and be like, hey, give me some more questions, guys. Come on. We want to give Shelly like your toughest question, the question that you've had for like 10 years that you haven't been able to Google. You want to ask Shelly that question during this presentation, and she will be able to handle it. So please put that in the Q&A. In terms of it, I know that Shelly does like it. If you could put like just a quick, like, what's your business, what's your industry, and then your question, because that'll help her in terms of tailoring a response for you. But yeah, definitely don't make it easy on Shelly. Make it tough, give her some tough questions, and you're going to get a great presentation. And so before I turn over to our partners, I did want to just mention that for SBDC at FIU, we have a focus on growing your business. And it's a really cool program. And actually, rather than talk about all the stuff that we do, this is the team that can help you. A really great team of specialists, including Shelly. You'll see her picture on the right, but each of them is a specialist in different areas, from access to capital, HR, government contracting, international trade, very heavy focus on financial management and access to capital. So if you're in Miami-Dade County, this is the team that can help you out. If you are in the Florida Keys, hey, Florida Keys, but we also do have 4 consultants in the Keys that can help you all the way from Key West all the way up. And so we're just here to help you grow your business, and we are very happy to partner with SFMA and First American. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, and then Sarah can talk a little bit more about First American Bank.
Thanks, Brian. As Brian mentioned, I'm Sarah Eichenberry. I'm with commercial lender with First American Bank. We are a privately held bank specializing in working with small to medium-sized businesses, many of which are privately held and family-owned. We're pleased to have developed a relationship over the years with the SBDC and the SFMA, and just helping to serve as a resource to the local business community. We're a full-service commercial bank. We have delegated authority under all the SBA programs, so we have a wealth of tools and experience that allows us to help advise our clients and businesses as they grow and look to new opportunities. And that's exactly what Shelly's going to be talking about today. So let us know if we can help in any way.
Yeah, Matt, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, everybody. Matt Rocco, president of the South Florida Manufacturers Association. Glad to be here with First American Bank and SBDC, great partners of ours. As Sarah mentioned, they got a lot of great services. You're going to hear a lot of great things from SBDC today, so really utilize what they can do. Our association represents an area of 6,000 manufacturers, large territory. Miami-Dade County specifically has just over 2,500 manufacturers. But I think this is a great webinar and seminar you all are putting on. This is great for the manufacturing industry as well. Innovation, growth, creating growth, sustaining growth, and we're seeing a lot of industries, innovating and growing. And I think the tools and the things that Shelly will mention today are great. We're here for all manufacturers, to help manufacturers get better at what they do, to help them grow, to help them innovate, to help them train. Our association has impacted the South Florida region by $1.3 billion with a B, $1.3 billion since 2016. So we are really impacting the industry. So thank you again for allowing me to be here. Again, great partners, SBDC and First American Bank. Thank you again.
No, thanks, Sarah and Matt, and thanks for partnering with us on this. So without further ado, I'm going to let Shelly get into the presentation. She is a very experienced international trade specialist. She's one of our most popular consultants on the team. And also, this is one of our most popular trainings that we do. When we do it in person, doesn't always hurt that we have food as well. We do get 90, 100 people regularly attending. And it's all the way from little small businesses to like very large SMEs. So with that, I'm going to turn over to you, Shally, and let you get into the presentation. Just thanks everybody for joining.
Yes, thanks, Brian, for putting the pressure on me. Maybe I'll extend the presentation and there won't be time for Q&A. No, actually, I really do enjoy the interaction. And I learned a term recently that I kind of adopted. It's called a thinking catalyst. So I have recently started referring to myself as a thinking catalyst, because essentially that is what we do when we work with business owners. We try to present different perspectives or different data and information to help make better decisions. My name is Shally Burnell, and this webinar topic is creating strategic growth. And I would like to go through a couple of terms here on the growth. It's actually not just increasing revenues or top line. It can also be decreasing the costs to make the company more profitable. That would be growth. And on strategic, I'm actually referring to the most efficient use of the resources available. So this is, it's kind of an art more than a science of calibrating the different resources that a business has available to get the most impact from that, to get the highest return on those resources. And if any of you have been in business for many years, like decades, you might find yourself asking, why is growth becoming increasingly difficult to achieve? I was recently on a webinar with Frost and Sullivan, and when I saw this, it just resonated with me because I think this encapsulated the vast majority of the conversations that I have been having. And I wanted to use that as one of the talking points through whenever I share the tool that I have to share today. And so in this, they were describing 8 significant factors that are putting pressure on businesses. And through that discussion, they shared overall a different requirement of capacities and behaviors among businesses to be able to succeed, to be able to grow with these pressures on them. And whenever I looked at this, kind of the left column and the right column, meaning the present or past and moving into the present / future, what strikes me the most among these is that on the column on the right, we're really talking about a lot of decision making. And so on the left column, that structure of organization, I think of it as an organization that goes through annual planning, possibly a semi-annual touch-up planning process, but really an annual planning, setting the objective for the year, and each business function, finance, operations, sales, establishing the strategies for the year to be able to meet that objective. And whenever I think of those behaviors on the right column, I'm thinking of businesses that hearken to the tech startups. I mean, if I were to just read those behaviors and not in the context that they were presented, I would think that we were talking about a tech startup business. And now this is really more of a description of all businesses. And that, because of these decisions that are necessary and the more than once a year time frame of it, it's compressed in the sense that we're doing this several times throughout the year, all the time. Actually, it's just continuous process. That's why I thought that this tool could be very useful for this particular process. And that is a repeatable decision-making process. So it's the planning and the implementation, or making decisions and taking actions. And it's just constant, and it's on different planes or different topics at the same time or overlapping each other. It's not, as we may have been accustomed to doing in our businesses previously, a once a year process, and then we focus on the tactical moves of the day-to-day implementation or measuring KPIs. Now it's a different environment that we're working in, and there are different behaviors from the organization that are required to have growth, to succeed. And so I am going to present to you 6 simple and flexible components that can be a disciplined approach to problem solving. It can provide structure for a thorough analysis, and it can encourage the challenging of assumptions and conventional wisdom. These components are a situation analysis, objective, strategies, plans, execution, and tracking. And so I didn't put these in a step-by-step process where there's, step 1 and then step 2. I purposely put it like this because it's a very repetitive and moving process. So these are not steps, they're components that can be taken out of the toolbox to use whenever you need that component, but not necessarily a step that you use after the step before and before the next step. And with these 6 components, the keys for an effective decision-making process are focus, thoroughness, linking everything together, creativity more than anything, just being open to changing the assumptions or the underlying beliefs that we have, and iteration, or repeating the process. And I would like to briefly describe each one of these 6 components. With the situation analysis, it's, as you might imagine, it is taking stock on what is the situation, the data, what is happening, why, what is outside of our business, what's inside of our business. It is gathering and sorting all of the data and facts, and then pulling out what is key, what are the conclusions, what are the takeaways, communicating within the organization, and then coming up with a summary, an action summary, something that the company can make decisions on. Within the situation analysis, one of the topics that I tend to advocate for is thinking about the competitive advantage, the unique combination of factors that gives the business an advantage over the competition. And one of the characteristics is that it is important to the consumer. Another one is that the competition wants it but doesn't have it. And another one is that you can have it if you don't have it right now. With the objective, we are looking at trying to define or verbalize what it is we're trying to achieve with this decision-making process. And I use the acronym SMART with a particular emphasis on time specific. And so without the time specific component of an objective, what happens is that the process creeps. And I do see this, I guess this entire process, the decision-making process, is the antithesis of creep. Just the creep of not making decisions, taking in information, questioning, but not having a time to make a decision and do something, take an action. even if it's a temporary action, but moving forward, not creeping. The strategy is how can you get to that objective? What do you need to do to accomplish that objective? Within the strategy component, I advocate for examining your strengths and weaknesses of the business with the competition, as well as the environment and the opportunities and threats in the environment. The plans are very much the action items, what needs to be done today, what needs to be done next week. How are we going to finish off these strategies? What needs to be done? Who's going to do it? How much is it going to cost? Those are the plans. And execution is making it happen. Within execution, I advocate for giving attention to monitoring the results, both what you're expecting and not expecting, because if this isn't the right path, if it's not fulfilling what we identified as our assumptions, then we can change. We can go do something else. But if we're not monitoring what's happening and we're not paying attention to that, we could end up farther down a path than where we needed to go to make a decision to change off of it. And adjust plans to the ongoing changes, and then keeping all the key players informed. Communication goes hand in hand with decisions. It's impossible for a business to make decisions and take action without communication internally, primarily, but also externally to the key partners that those decisions affect. And tracking is measuring the results. And is it what we expected? Is it not what we expected? And what does this mean to us? Does this mean that this is the right path? Does this mean that this is not what we thought it would be? And so with these 6 components, I am presenting to you a toolbox for decision making, of taking decisions and taking actions. It is an approach to problem solving. It's a structure for analysis, and it encourages the challenging of assumptions. As I mentioned before, even before last year, 2020, so 2019 and prior years, I was using this toolkit, these components, more with companies for the annual plan. And we focus heavily on the last 3 components in the grouping instead of the first 3 of the situation analysis, objective, and strategies. But now I've been doing the last year more emphasis on not the annual plan, but objectives like a new customer target, decisions about new products or services, decisions about new business models, for example, decisions about topics that are occurring and recurring and overlapping each other, not like an annual plan. And so I mentioned that we focus mainly on the plans, execution, and tracking. From the rest of this webinar on, I'm really not going to focus on the plans, execution, and tracking, because this last year, what I have learned is that a lot of business owners have been in business for many years, and they either used an intuitive method to start the business, or weren't the founders of the business and may not have ever been exposed to the process of a startup, which is what these first 3 components really support, is the mindset or the mental process of starting a business. And so this year I have been specifically focusing on showing, guiding, encouraging business owners on the capabilities that maybe they have never been exposed to, or certainly have not practiced significantly in recent years. And that is the situation analysis, objective, and strategies. So we will start with the situation analysis, and I'll use examples to kind of go through how to apply this component to your business. So I go back to the introduction with why is growth becoming increasingly difficult to achieve, and these 8 pressures on businesses. And whenever I look at the compression of customer value chain, this is one in which I see many companies that I work with facing, because it addresses what we have been witnessing, I would say, for at least a decade, of the supply chain transforming from the traditional, where there were many more players in the supply chain, to what is now. There are new channels, and the online or e-merchants and distributors, to what is predicted to be the next phase of direct-to-consumer platforms. And these adjustments in the business environment have significantly impacted many businesses that are in Miami-Dade County, for example, which is our source of clients. That's who we work with. Another area that I'm going to use now for an example through the rest of the webinar is the innovative business models. And this is really something that I would say prior to recent years was not something that businesses worked on. Once you had a business model that was profitable, it was really not looked at to adjust, change, or innovate that business model. What we are seeing, one of the pressures on businesses, is the rapid uptick, adoption of innovative business models, and the impacts that those are having on other businesses. And so one example I want to look at is this core market. So your business is in a current market. It has current customers, and it has a current market, and that is the core of the business. And if we are to look at adjacent markets, we would be either looking at a market that's adjacent to the core business, or we would be looking at customers that are new. They're adjacent to your core customers. So either your existing customers, but you're doing something different for them, new products or services, or new customers, possibly close to what you are already doing. That would be an adjacent market. And this would involve utilizing your existing capabilities to stretch the business outward into an adjacent market. And so what this really surprised me was the effectiveness of this for businesses. So as they presented in this webinar, with a minimum of 50% increase. And then they gave more information about this, that in this case, they're using an example of automobile manufacturers. So let's just say Ford, for example, has a core business. And so the possibility is that these fundamental core markets may not be increasing in the future. And so in this case, it is decreasing in the future. So even if the business excels at what it is doing, even if it gains more market share in the core market that it's in, it still could not increase revenues because the entire market or playground that it's playing in is decreasing. But when you look at just one adjacent market, that in this case, I'm going to use the example of automobile finance. So Ford starts partnering with a lender and now is offering Ford financing. That adjacent market, even if the core market could be shrinking, could be expanding. And in this case, it's expected to more than double that those adjacent markets in that case. Then if the business expands into an adjacent market, it has a high probability of experiencing revenue growth, profitability growth, etc. And so we can look at adjacent markets, and that's what we're going to use as our example in this case for our situation analysis. So we start to think about questions like, is it large enough to accept a new player? Who are the competitors in the marketplace? What are their strengths and weaknesses? And how can our business capitalize on the weaknesses with our own strengths, or could we develop strengths that could position us well in that adjacent market? Anytime I'm talking with a business about a new market, either new customers or providing something different to existing customers, I absolutely love this visual because I think it captures the essence of one of the most important points of new markets. In the marketplace, the business is either better, different, or cheaper, or it doesn't succeed. It's just not around that much longer. In my case, I don't usually work with businesses that are cheaper because cheaper generally coincides with volume or quantity. And in general, I'm not working with the largest businesses on the planet. And so most of the time, I'm looking at being better or being different. And in this visual, you can see that when we start with what consumers want, there are green, yellow, and red areas that the business could be positioned in. And distinguishing between those areas is absolutely fundamentally critical for the business. Are you in the losing zone, the red zone? Are you in the yellow zone? Or are you in the winning zone? And when we look at what your company does best, you have the option of the green, yellow, or blue areas. But knowing where you're at is fundamental and critical. We have to distinguish between what you're doing best, because even if you're doing it great, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the winning zone. You could be competing in an area where the consumer really doesn't care that much. They have higher priorities. Or you could compete directly with what the competitor is also doing very well. And then there is not necessarily an advantage or a probability of higher success for you, unless there's something else that you add in, like it mentions speed, innovation, or an emotional connection with the consumer. But distinguishing between these is very critical. And so many times when I'm working with a business, it's not impossible to identify competitive advantages. What starts to become more challenging is determining where exactly that business is positioning itself in the marketplace in these terms. And that is part of what we start identifying now through the situation analysis about our new adjacent market that we want to approach. Competitive advantage, as I mentioned, extremely important, and we start addressing that right in the situation analysis. Also, a consumer-centric focus. I would say that most business models are product-centric, and certainly businesses that have existed for an extended period of time. They started with a product. They're very product-centric focused. Transitioning to a consumer-centric focus is also critical. It's necessary right now. That is where the competition is really happening at. And even if the business, let's say even in 2019, did the work, it was aligned with the consumer's priorities, their needs, their wants, and you're delivering that. That doesn't mean that you're still aligned, because consumers are constantly changing in this environment because new options are being offered. And even if new options are not being offered in your space, those people, human beings, are being exposed to new options in other industries, which bleeds into your industry because now they have different expectations than they did before. And so it's not only about who are your competitors and what are they doing, it's more about how is the perspective of your target customer changing over time, and are you changing to continue to meet those needs and wants? And one of these points that's made in this, by the way, I put all the references whenever I am an avid learner, and I'm continually gathering more data and information. But in no way do I represent that these ideas and concepts are my own. I'm simply trying to pass along fantastic information that I have been lucky enough to find. In this case, one of them that really drives home for me is that businesses don't fail because they lack a product or service. And that's true. Every business that I have ever met with has a product or service. The difficulty is in approaching, connecting, securing the customers, and the entire financial model, the cost, the price, the profitability, the demand. And so we ended situation analysis, and now we are ready to start another component, objective. And to give you an idea, this is my time hourglass. The time that it takes to do the situation analysis is approximately half of what it would take, is the same as what it takes to do all the other components together. And so it's the weight, the importance is on the situation analysis. In this case, our example, our objective is to determine if a market opportunity is viable. So we have identified an adjacent market that we think that we have a competitive advantage in, and now we need to determine if it's a viable opportunity or not. And then we conduct market feasibility. In conducting market feasibility, one of the areas is the revenue model, which is very much focused on the cost structure of the business, the cost structure of that product or service offering. So that includes cost of goods sold, operations. Another one is pricing. In here, we have also with the costs, we have assumptions. So within the objective, what we start identifying are all of the assumptions that we are making about this new adjacent market opportunity and our competitive advantage in it. So we're making assumptions about the cost structure. We're making assumptions about the prices and how that affects the demand, the quantity, the volume. What is the size that we can capture from this? These are the assumptions that we start creating in the objective process. And on the selling strategy, it's your go-to-market strategy. Where are the customers located? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to sell to them? All of this are mainly assumptions at this point. So our objective is determine if the identified adjacent market opportunity is viable by testing the assumptions about costs, pricing, demand, and go-to-market strategy within the next 90 days. That is an example of an objective that is not an annual plan. That's an example of an objective that is the business being agile, being innovative, those characteristics, those behaviors that we discussed earlier. And now I'll share the component of strategies. In this example, strategies would be, how can we determine if the assumptions that we have are correct? How can we test those assumptions? How can we validate or prove or disprove these assumptions? Essentially, what we're trying to get at is the truth, not at our assumptions. We're trying to find facts through this process of validating our assumptions. It involves trial and error. It involves an open mindset in the sense that we want to discover our prejudices. So these could be what our customers did want, did buy a few years back. That would be a prejudice because we're carrying that with us. Well, time flies anyways. So it's really difficult for us to imagine how much has changed in a few years because it went by so fast, we really feel like it was just yesterday. But those prejudices that we're not identifying and calling out could be the reason that we are not identifying and taking advantage of opportunities that exist for the business in the future. Essentially, through the strategies in all this assumption testing process, we are trying to eliminate the risk involved in the decision that we need to make of either moving forward or not into that adjacent market opportunity that we identified. And so these are our 6 components: the situation analysis, objective, strategies, plans, execution, and tracking. And like I mentioned, I'm not going to go through the other 3 in depth. And this brings us back to creating strategic growth, either growing the top line or reducing the cost to increase the profitability, grow the company, and planning and coordinating the resources for their most efficient and effective use. Do you have a regular process for guiding your company's strategic choices? Are you capturing the full extent of growth opportunities? Are you evaluating growth opportunities using a consistent approach? Are you accounting for disruptions in your go-to-market strategy? And are you aligning any resources to these efforts? Creating strategic growth with this decision-making process is one of making decisions, taking action, planning, and implementing. And the final question is, do you have a repeatable process to consistently get your company to invest its time, talent, attention, and money into the right things in the face of so many demands and urgencies day to day, crying out for its resources? And I look forward to hearing if there are any questions that we can open up for discussion.
Okay, so does anybody have tough questions for Shelly? Don't be shy. Let's see what we got. Okay, so I don't see anything in the Q&A, Shelly. I see everybody says it's helpful. I see everybody wanted Matt's information. I see that folks put on for Sarah to get Sarah's information. Let's see. Synergizing. Samantha had a question, Shelly, about synergizing. So you're talking about synergies and synergizing?
Did actually. That's one of the innovative business models. And I briefly kind of introduced it in one of the examples with the auto finance.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the question is, but I would validate that, yes, I think that synergies are becoming increasingly important. It's co-opetition or cooperation, however you want to frame it, depending on how you're pairing up. And it can be within your own industry. It can be into other industries. We're seeing players move from industry to industry, which is increasing the competition in those industries, which is something that your business can do as well, depending on partnerships and in the view of the opportunity in an adjacent market.
Yeah. And then we had one of the questions, I think it's actually from one of your clients, was asking about consumer research. Consumer research is sometimes expensive. Any help in this area, maybe via web surveys, but I also think it's loaded because you can help with that, right? You can help with kind of demographics and kind of industry information and things like that.
We can. So it depends. The data that's available is what it is. So we do have subscriptions to databases that provide us with information, and we can obviously access it with our subscription and provide it to you at no cost. So this is fantastic for businesses because it means that they don't have to go out and invest in all of these resources to get access to the data. However, it doesn't mean that we have subscriptions to everything, and it doesn't mean that we have data on everything. And so there are some times when we're specifically looking for data about customers or consumers that we don't have access to it or it is not available. In those cases, what we try to use is a proxy. So we try to identify other facts or other information that could approximately represent what we're trying to determine in terms of either demand or price points or cost structures. And in that way, we get as close as we can to assuming what the range of that answer could be, which gets us a little bit closer to making a more informed decision.
Yeah, and then I did see, we will make the video, we are recording this. So this video will be available on our YouTube page. Brianna will provide you with the link. Also, Shelly did mention some references, and so we will provide those references in the thank you email from Brianna, so keep a lookout for that. And then let me see what else we got. Samantha was asking that she was taught that strategic growth was based on looking at the company's different financial statements. How does the financial statements fit in? Please explain.
Absolutely. I would say that the essence of a business is in the money or lack thereof. In other words, I think that the money is the beginning, the middle, and the end of a business. Without that, there is no business. And so how do we capture money? We capture it in financial statements, et cetera. I absolutely believe that that's a great source for looking for opportunities. And in fact, there are databases that we have subscriptions to that allow industry benchmarking analysis. So we can get access to benchmarking ratios, financial ratios for your industry, for the size of business that you are. So the financial ratios will be very different for a Fortune 100 company in your industry and a company that is the same size as you in your industry. And so we can get access to those, compare them to the ratios of your own financial statements, and there start to open up areas to explore. This is what I would call, it's more core focused. And so absolutely, you can look within your core business and identify how you could improve and be more profitable. Also, you can look at areas where possibly the ratios are not at industry average or better, and think about ways that you could have synergies or partnerships, adjacent markets to be able to change those and then bring the company into a more competitive position.
Mhm. And I see Mike, hey, good to see you, Mike. Mike basically just put a comment about, seems like the many manufacturers who pivoted to produce PPE products. Where I know we've had a couple of clients that did that too, where they kind of pivoted based on the industry and then kind of were providing PPE to kind of service the need. So that was just more of a comment. We had a question on how to determine the viability of the market in the service sector.
I would go along the exact same path.
Mm-hmm.
We need to identify the assumptions that we're making about that even being an opportunity. What are the cost assumptions? What are the price assumptions? What are the demand assumptions? What are our assumptions about reaching those customers and selling, closing those sales? Within that realm is what that's market feasibility. They call it studies, but in our case, it's less academic and more practical. We're just trying to get as close as we can to making a decision about whether or not we want to invest any of our resources heading in that direction. But for services, it's very much, I think it's the same process. It's just that there are different questions and then different resources for information or data.
Mm-hmm. And then John had a question, what's a good strategy to locate my competition in the area that I've started my company?
Well, there are several. There's a tool for online where you can do searches for competitors. Those generally rely on industry codes that the companies are classified under, and sometimes those are accurate and sometimes they are not accurate. But I would say, for me, I would start with the customer. Whoever your target customer is for your new business, I would start with that. What are they doing? Are they utilizing other services? Are they utilizing other products? What are their options? What's their experience? So their decision-making journey when they're trying to solve whatever problem it is that your business is solving. And within capturing that journey, I would say I would start to see or have open a door into some of the competitors that the new business would be facing.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. And then Lizette had a question on where can a small business owner go for low-cost help in writing a P3 proposal? Are they talking about PPP or some other different one?
I think she might be talking about public-private partnership, which is
Okay.
kind of along the lines of government contracting. Sometimes they have them as public-private partnerships. Unfortunately, I don't work in government procurement, government contracting, which is where I think this question may be coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, she
personally, I
confirmed
wouldn't
that.
be able to say.
Yeah, she confirmed that. Basically, if it is, there's a lot of resources out there related to the PTAC program. So the procurement technical assistance, if you are looking related to government proposals, government contracting, and they do have a lot of information either through the Florida SBDC, the Florida PTAC. If you just search for Florida PTAC, they have a lot of online stuff that's available. Also, the Georgia PTAC is across the state line, but they do have a lot of web videos and things like that. And then we do have a PTAC program in Florida, and actually our center has a PTAC consultant. So if you are looking along the government contracting route, then we can obviously help in that respect. So any other questions, guys? Any other questions for Shelly? Those weren't too tough. Come on, give her one tough question. Or maybe Jesus will find one. Jesus will come up with one. Lizette just said thank you, so it wasn't a tough question. But no, I just want to thank you, Shelley, for the presentation. I don't know if our partners at SFMA or First American, if they have anything else they want to say. They're always great partners to work with on trainings, events, workshops, and so I always like to take care of them. So I'll let them say any kind of closing remarks. Sarah.
Just thank you, Brian, and SBDC for putting this on. Great information.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you, Shelley. A lot of great things to think about.
Mhm.
Everyone's brain's turning.
Yeah, so that's a good thing.
I'm
And
a
then,
thinking catalyst.
yeah, you should have that like a kind of on the top. That should be like a flashing on the top when you're presenting.
Right?
And then, as we mentioned, Brianna will be circling back with the link for today's video. She'll also be following up with some additional information. Definitely just appreciate everybody participating. We had almost 50 attendees on here, so that's not too bad. And then just feel free to reach out to us, the First American Bank, the SFMA, if we can help you in any way. And just thanks again for everybody's time.